You're not strong enough to hold that place together. Sooner or later, you'll break. That's what they told Marina right before they tried to take everything: her husband's garage, her son's future, and the strange old car she should have never bought. But when she discovered what was hidden beneath the floorboard, everything changed. Now she's being watched, threatened, and asked to choose between silence or truth. Before we dive in, let me know, what time are you listening to this and where are you? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. The cicadas screamed that day, shrill, insistent. Heat wavered above the gravel lot behind the shop, warping the air into restless ripples. Inside the garage, the fan clunked in its own stubborn tempo, never in step with Marina's wrench. Sweat slid along her collarbone, her fingers slick with oil, and labor dug deep into the guts of a car that should have given out decades ago. A thud rolled out from the front office. "Mom." She didn't glance up. "You wearing shoes?" "No." "Then stay out." Glass under the bench. Eli hovered in the doorway, one sock slipping at his heel. 10 years old, but slight enough to look younger. Thin wrists, wide eyes, a mouth that always seemed to measure words before letting them loose. "I made noodles. Used the last of the green stuff from the freezer. Still good." Marina leaned back from the engine, swiped her forehead with her arm, and nodded once. "That's dinner, then." He lingered another heartbeat, then drifted away. The microwave's single beep echoed through the quiet like a strange kind of reassurance. She lowered herself onto the mechanic's stool. The garage carried her husband's presence, still pine cleaner, mingled with scorched rubber. That smell had wrapped itself around him the way his laugh used to quiet steady. Above the bench hung a rusted frame. Daniel Ballcap tugged low, grinned at her from behind a carburetor. She didn't touch it, only stared until her eyes ached dry. A rap sounded from the open bay. Frank from the hardware store stood there, arms crossed, khaki shorts already soaked through. He skipped a greeting. "Shop's still standing, huh? Figured you'd have closed by now. Hard work for a woman." Marina turned slow, deliberate. No flinch, no bite. Just the same way someone studies the horizon for a storm-patient wary. "My husband always said," she murmured, adjusting a wrench on the pegboard, "an engine doesn't care whose grip steadies it, only that someone listens." Frank half smirked, half scoffed, and shuffled off, muttering about fools and transmissions. A low rumble cut into the brittle afternoon. Marina stepped into the sunlight as a flatbed pulled up along the cracked curb. Strapped to it was a car that looked unearthed from a grave paint sun-faded to black dust. One headlight missing, rust crawling up the fenders like decay. The driver hopped down, clipboard in hand. "57 Bel Air. Owner defaulted. You're the last shop on the list." She didn't answer right away. Boots crunching grit, she circled the vehicle, dust rising with each step. It wasn't merely old, it seemed weary, as though it had forgotten what it once was. Her palm brushed the hood. "It's dead," the driver said. Marina tilted her head, listening. Beneath that shell lingered something deeper than silence. She studied the car for a long moment before finally speaking. "Not yet." The word hung in the heat. By evening, that same air followed her into the town hall, thick with polish and overbrewed coffee. The ceiling fans kept turning lazily, scattering the smell through rows of folding chairs that shifted and groaned under waiting bodies. Marina sat 2 seats from the back, spine straight but not rigid, hands folded in her lap. Grease traced the same lines on her knuckles where her wedding ring once rested. The microphone squealed softly as Catherine stepped up to the podium, folder hugged tight against her ribs. Her pearl-colored cardigan gleamed under the light's earrings, catching the room with too much brightness. "I want to thank everyone for coming," she began, her polished tone slicing through the hush. "What we're discussing today isn't just about a garage. It's about preserving what's left of my brother's legacy." Several heads nodded, a few traded glances. Marina kept her face unreadable. "The shop has been running below cost for nearly 6 months," Catherine pressed on. "Orders are down, expenses are up. And now," she flipped a page with a pause for effect, "now she's wasting what little remains at auctions, hauling back rust heaps instead of customers." Agreement rippled through the rows. Marina let out a breath too faint to notice. "I bought one car," she said, rising, but not turning toward them, "with my money, in my name." Catherine still didn't face her. A 57 Chevy Bel Air, dragged in like roadkill. "That's not investment, it's delusion." The room stirred. Someone muttered, "More rust than car." She's gambling everything, Catherine declared at last, locking eyes with her. Even the name my brother built with his life. My husband didn't build that shop alone, Marina answered softer now. We built it together. And now he's gone. Catherine's voice held steady. Maybe it's time you admit you can't run it without him. The words sank hard, stretching the pause until even the fans seemed to falter. Marina's eyes drifted to the back wall where sepia photographs told the town's history. Her husband's grandfather jaw, carved from iron, stood beside the garage's first blueprint. A man of steel and resolve. Her heartbeat thundered. She offered nothing more, no defense, no justification. The meeting crawled on, but the air had shifted. Neighbors passed without meeting her eyes. A hand brushed her shoulder, not comfort, just acknowledgement. She let it slide away like grit. Eli was waiting outside, arms folded, jeans streaked with dirt. What happened? Nothing new, she said, squeezing his hand as they walked back. The garage met them in silence, sunlight carving long bars across the floor. The Chevy remained where it had been left, motionless, waiting. Eli climbed into the driver's seat, curling his legs up like a cat. He spun the cracked wheel with slow, deliberate turns. Smells weird in here. Marina leaned against the frame. Old cars do. It's like crayons. And wood. Not bad, though. He tapped the dash as if expecting a reply. You think it remembers who used to ride in it? She stepped closer. The scent cut sharper now, something richer than dust and leather. Her touch skimmed the passenger seat until it caught on a panel not flush with the rest. A careful push, and the seam lifted with a metallic click. Is that hidden? Eli whispered, eyes wide. A hollow compartment revealed itself. Something lay wedged inside a box iron and weathered heavy in her grip as she drew it out. Rust curled away in thin flakes. The lock was frozen solid, but the shell still held firm. What's in it? Eli asked, holding his breath. I don't know, Marina murmured. She carried it to the workbench. The bulb above flickered, washing the metal in a sickly yellow. Dust drifted through the stale air. She stood over it, unmoving, palm resting against the lid. The growl of the flatbed's engine still haunted her ears, though hours had passed. Eli lingered by the car, staring at the gap where the box had been hidden. Maybe, he said softly, it wants to be fixed. She gave no reply, eyes locked on the seal and whatever it guarded. A rag half reached her hand, froze mid-air, trembling. The latch resisted, but she wasn't sliding the box back under that seat, not anymore. Another attempt. Still jammed. Her grip tightened, knuckles whitening against the cold iron until she reached for a screwdriver. The tip wedged into the seam and gave with a reluctant snap. Marina winced at the metal's protest, but the lid finally loosened. Eli leaned closer, silent, wide-eyed. She raised the cover slowly, as if the box might strike. Beneath a sheet of waxed paper lay folded documents, their creases yellow with age. A stack of photographs curled at the edges, some in negative, the kind that needed light to reveal their images. At the very bottom rested a bundle of parchment-bound pages, tied neatly with twine. Marina lifted the top sheet. The handwriting curved sharply, the ink still dark and strong. Not English. French, maybe. Or German. Her fingertips grazed a faded seal pressed in the corner. Something official-looking, though she couldn't place it. Eli leaned closer. Is that a painting? The photograph he held was grainy, yet the image was clear, a canvas on a wooden easel. The painting showed a girl seated near a window, hands folded, eyes turned towards something unseen. Behind her hung curtains in the same style Marina once had in her bedroom. Her pulse slowed, then spiked again. She slid everything into a folder and snapped the box shut. The steel clanged too loudly in the garage's stillness. The next morning they walked to the town library. Eli trailed behind, dragging his fingertips along the brick wall like a game. Marina had hardly slept. The more she tried to reason it out, old art, maybe stolen, certainly forgotten, the less sense it made. The library carried the smell of dust and glue. At the reference desk under a yellowing skylight, a young woman with thick glasses blinked up from her monitor. Do you have any translators? Marina asked. Languages, the woman replied. French or German? The woman hesitated. Not here. You might try Simon Avery. Used to teach comparative history at Tulane. Got canned. Long story. Marina hugged the folder tighter. Where would I find him? He rents the back of the drugstore. Smells like mothballs. You'll know it when you get there. By late afternoon, Marina finally called. The phone rang 5 times before someone answered. What a man's voice, rough as gravel. Is this Dr. Avery used to be? Who's this? I was told you might translate some documents. Historical, possibly French and German. A long pause. I don't do private work. Just take a look, she urged. I'll bring them. No obligation. Another pause. Then tomorrow, if you're on time. She hung up before he could change his mind. That evening, she sat at the office desk, the garage lease contract spread open. A clean line waited for her signature. The ink in her pen had long dried. Eli was asleep on the cot behind the curtain toy truck, sideways on his pillow. The building groaned as wind pushed through the rafters. She stared at the line. People said she was clinging too hard, risking too much, chasing ghosts. The pen rolled from the desk before she could decide. By morning, the sky hung low and gray. Marina moved through her routine by rote coffee keys, checked the lock. The folder never left her arm. She didn't hear the truck until it pulled into the lot. The engine coughed twice, then went silent. A man stepped out, 50s maybe, worn jacket, canvas bag slung over one shoulder, hair graying but combed with care. Each step seemed negotiated. Simon Avery, he said, offering his hand. Marina Holt. He didn't smile, only glanced past her to the open bay where the Bel Air waited. I brought this. From his bag, he drew a printed page unfolded with care. A reproduction of a painting, faded but clear. The same girl, same posture, same curtains. Marina's throat tightened. He didn't ask how she had found the original. She didn't explain why the photo had been hidden under a car seat. She passed him the folder without a word. Their fingers brushed. His brows lifted faintly. Both stared down at the file as if it had begun to hum. Simon carried it to the workbench, spreading the papers like puzzle pieces across the scarred wood. He moved slowly, fingertip tracing a line of handwriting in faded black ink lips, silently shaping syllables she couldn't follow. This one, he said, tapping a document on ivory stock references, an artist, Carl Weiss. German Jewish. Went missing in 1945 after fleeing to Lyon. Marina folded her arms. I don't know the name. You wouldn't, Simon replied quietly. Most people don't, but in certain circles, he's a ghost worth chasing. She stepped closer. The photo, the sealed French letter, none of it looked like proof, yet Simon's tone had shifted from curiosity to certainty. These papers mention at least 3 original works. If they're tied to Weiss, he added, glancing up, you may be holding pieces unseen since the war ended. Her eyelids flickered. Simon gave a slow nod. This car, it may have carried them. Smuggled after the occupation, hidden beneath floorboards, slipped across borders. See these codes stamped in the corner. They're French resistance archive marks. Her palm rubbed against her jeans. You're saying this was a smuggling vehicle for stolen art, not stolen, rescued. Or at least, that's one version. A metallic tang filled her mouth. She lowered her eyes to the photographs, envelopes, the brittle list of names. Maybe I shouldn't have touched it, she whispered. It feels like something that should have stayed buried. Simon stayed silent, gaze fixed on the folder, as if it might shift on its own. I need time, she muttered, stepping back. I need to think. He offered no protest. She walked out to the lot, sunlight slipping through clouds. The Chevy sat under a dishwater sky paint, dulled to gray. Her breath caught. A car door slammed. She turned. Catherine's heels clicked sharply on the pavement, a man in a blue suit trailing with a briefcase. Marina. Catherine called, voice formal, brows already lifted. This is Mr. Kellerman, our attorney. Marina gave no reply. We're moving forward, Catherine said. You'll get paperwork this week, legal filing to reclaim the garage as part of the estate. You've held it long enough. The man held out an envelope. Marina didn't take it. It's not personal, Catherine added with a flat smile. You're not the right steward for this place. Behind them, Simon leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. Don't open anything, he warned later, once they'd gone. Not yet. Not to the public. Whatever's in that car, it's bigger than paperwork or family fights. She gave no answer, only stared at the envelope now resting on the workbench, untouched, a new threat wrapped in crisp legalese. The hours crawled. She cooked dinner, forgot to salt the noodles. Eli didn't complain. That night, long after he'd fallen asleep, she drifted back to the garage. Her eyes stung dust or something heavier pressing in her chest. She sank onto the floor near the Chevy's back tire folder at her side. A screwdriver lay in her grip, idle neither tool nor weapon. On the bench sat Eli's journal spine, frayed pages crammed with sketches, trucks, rockets, and now half a page of careful pencil drawings of the odd trinkets they'd uncovered under the seat, a key, a coin, a strip of stitched fabric. Beneath them in block letters, "If I don't keep it safe, who will?" She rose slowly. In the office, the lease contract still lay folded by the lamp, her name scrawled in the corner. The signature line remained blank. Without sitting, she tore the sheet in half. The pieces drifted down in uneven strips, landing without sound. She left them where they fell. By the next noon, a man in a navy blazer too crisp for the town appeared at the edge of her lot shoes, polished to a mirror sheen that didn't belong anywhere near dust and engine oil. He stepped lightly over a puddle left by the morning storm. "You must be Marina Holt," he called, voice smooth practiced. She paused mid-wipe, rag hanging in her hand, eyes narrowing as she scrubbed the grease away. "Depends who's asking." "Victor Hale," he said, slipping a card between two fingers. "Advisor in legal asset protection. I heard you might be facing pressure, family disputes, estate claims, maybe even cultural entanglements." The phrasing cinched tight in her chest. Victor smiled as though her reaction pleased him. "Small towns aren't built for complicated situations. But I've helped people like you before. Owners blindsided by legal traps, bureaucratic clause." Marina hesitated, then took the card. Heavy stock embossed lettering. Heritage Preservation Council glimmered on the logo, though his title underneath remained deliberately vague. "I didn't contact anyone," she said. "You didn't have to," he replied. "Sometimes the right people find you before the wrong ones do." She almost scoffed, but he continued. "I also have professional ties in conservation, museums, archives. I could confirm the authenticity of certain items quietly, before scavengers catch the scent." Her fingers tightened around the card. "You're saying you've heard about the car. I'm saying you may need protection, not just from family lawsuits, from people who don't knock before they take." A pause stretched. Victor adjusted his cufflinks, then gestured toward the street. "My number's on the back." She watched him leave, jaw locked until it ached. The card burned in her pocket all afternoon. By evening, Simon called, no greeting. "Did someone named Victor Hale speak to you?" Her stomach lurched. He was just here. "Don't engage," Simon warned. "He's been on the radar for years, represented private collectors in Zurich until half their pieces vanished, and he blamed clerical errors. He shuffles ownership, launders value through loopholes. Slick, untouchable in court." "He didn't ask for anything," Marina muttered. "He will." She paced the garage, trying to shake the tremor climbing her spine. The windows felt exposed, the air too heavy. Her gaze drifted to the Chevy. One of the crates from the back seat had been left beneath a tarp by the tool shelf. Or had it? The tarp lay flat. She pulled it back. Empty space. The crate was gone. Panic shoved into her chest. The rest of the room appeared untouched, but absence pulsed like a wound. She rushed to the corner, opened the security cabinet, tapped the dusty monitor. Dead feed. Every camera frozen, timestamps replaced with static. "No, no, no," she whispered. Mom Eli's voice drifted in from the side room. She swallowed, forcing steadiness. "It's fine, sweetie. Just stay in there, okay?" Heart hammering, she checked the doors. Locked. No forced entry. The front latch secure. Yet someone had been here, and they knew exactly what to take. Her knees weakened as she stepped out. The air reeked of motor oil and distant rain. Shadows bled across the lot. She turned back and slammed the side door shut. A bulb overhead flickered hard, strobing the concrete. The car waited in the same place, massive and mute. But something in its presence had shifted. Not in form, something deeper. The sense of safety she'd begun to draw from that shell of steel was gone. She edged forward and set her palm against the hood, warm with the day's heat. The touch felt foreign, distrustful. Behind her, a wrench clattered off a shelf. She didn't turn. She held still, watching her reflection ripple across the windshield, half afraid it might vanish if she blinked. The thought stayed with her long after she left the garage. By the next day, Simon was back at her workbench, a printed scan spread in his hands as though it might crumble under his touch. The page carried that rough archive grain, faded ink, a blurred red custom stamp, barely legible in the corner. This, he said, tapping the corner, is from a maritime manifest. France to New Jersey, March 1946. Black Chevy Bel Air two-door. It came through Le Havre under the name Jean-Luc Rochambeau. Marina lifted an eyebrow. So he slid another page from his folder. Because that name, it's a known alias. Eric Fuchs used it. Her breath caught. The painter. He inclined his head slowly. Viennese Jewish. Went into hiding during the war. Vanished in 45. Rumors say he escaped with uncatalogued work. Now there's an active dispute in The Hague over his estate. 6 paintings believed smuggled out before the Nazis closed in. None recovered. She bent over the document again. The name was there scrawled hastily at the bottom of the custom slip. You think this car? It's more than transport, he replied. It could be the last leg of a decades-old escape route. If those works were hidden here, it changes everything. Her skin prickled. He spread more papers across the table. The threads aligned shipping numbers tied to a lost lion archive, even one of Eli's sketches echoing a rumored Fuchs study. Marina's pulse hammered. The Chevy wasn't just a relic anymore. It radiated danger. She turned from the workbench, grabbed a marker, and began mapping on butcher paper pinned to the wall. Dots, lines, arrows, loops of names and cities: Zurich, Paris, Brooklyn, Omaha. Auction tags, smudged initials. It was beginning to make a terrible kind of sense. Her phone buzzed. Catherine, ignored. Buzz again, then again. By the 4th ring, Marina picked up. You've had your fun, Catherine's snapped voice clipped. Now listen. I've contacted the State Department's Office of Cultural Heritage. They have protocols. If you don't release the car within 72 hours, I'll file a full report. Marina gripped the desk edge. It's not confirmed to be anything, she murmured. You're a mechanic. You want to get dragged into international litigation? You think they'll let you keep that place when the feds arrive with boxes and badges? Marina kept silent. Catherine's tone dropped. You're a mother. Start acting like it. The call ended. She stood rooted, the weight of it pressing her down. The historian stayed back watching. When she finally turned, he said, It's your choice. But the longer this sits in limbo, the more people will reach for it. You can protect the truth, or you can protect yourself. Not both. She gave no reply. Not yet. Later that night, the house lay hushed. Marina sat at the dining table, papers stacked beside her laptop, the floor scattered with receipts, envelopes, museum printouts. She scanned, labeled, archived. Item 1946, customs.pdf, sketch on unknown, signature.jpg, shipping code, Weiss or Fuchs, Tia Ext. Her hands worked steadily even as her shoulders burned. Eli patted in socks, whispering on the floor, notebook in hand. He set it before her without a word and opened to a page. A pencil drawing rough but unmistakable. One of the strange tokens from the glove compartment, complete with arrows and notes. Beneath it, in his careful block letters, if Dad were here, what would he do? Marina's breath caught. She touched the sketch gently. Eli leaned against her arm, warm and still. She said nothing. An hour later, she remained at the table, the lamp casting sharp light across the files, the scanner blinking green with each page. The screen's glow reflected off her glasses as she kept feeding pages, one after another, long into the night. By morning, empty mugs crowded the corner of the desk, and the last document slid through the scanner with a tired hum. Marina rubbed her eyes, the taste of stale coffee clinging to her tongue. Days blurred after that. By the end of the week, the garage had turned into something between a workshop and an archive. Stacks of labeled boxes lined the back wall, each filled with items Marina, Simon, and Eli had uncovered from hidden compartments in the Chevy. The dust had shifted. It no longer carried the dry scent of neglect. It smelled of things long buried, now stirring again. Simon pried open the side panel near the driver's seat, with a butter knife, brow furrowed. Marina leaned over his shoulder. The metal creaked, then popped free, revealing a narrow cavity. Tucked inside was a bundle of papers in a felt pouch no larger than a handkerchief. Eli leaned closer, eyes wide. Careful, Marina whispered, though no one hurried. Simon spread the items on a clean towel. The pouch held 3 charcoal sketches portraits with faces hauntingly expressive, 2 of them marked with the initials EF. Marina traced the edge of one drawing, surprised by its condition. Then she spotted the faint watermark, March 1945, Metz. Behind the sketches rested a thin yellowed notebook filled with looping cursive in French. She couldn't read it, but Simon translated a line aloud. "The border has closed. We move only at night now. The paintings are too fragile, but the boy insists on taking them. He says they matter more than we do." He fell silent. So did Marina. In the days that followed, she began treating the car like something sacred. She cleaned every screw and hinge, lined the interior with protective sheets. Simon cataloged each scrap of writing. Eli perched on an upturned milk crate, sketching replicas of whatever they found. He never pressed for explanations, just recorded, as if memory itself was his responsibility. It was the first time in months Marina heard him laugh without restraint. Once he asked if they might drive the car when it was safe. Maybe she answered, a small smile breaking through. Even Simon seemed lighter. He stayed late, hunched over the workbench with black coffee and a magnifying glass, cross-referencing names against his old database. Once she caught him humming off-key but soft. There was something healing in Discovery's rhythm. One afternoon, as the sky bruised toward sunset, Marina scrubbed a rusted latch on the floor by the car. Eli brought her a peanut butter sandwich and sat cross-legged, notebook balanced on his knees. "You think whoever hid all this meant for it to be found?" he asked between bites. She paused. "I don't know. Maybe not by us. But maybe they knew someone would." She didn't reply right away. That night near 3 in the morning, a sound woke her. Not loud. Just wrong. She slipped on her slippers, padded down the hall past Eli's door. He still slept. The garage light was dark, but instinct pulled her there. She crept closer, stopping by the curtain that covered the small window toward the yard. A shadow shifted just beyond the porch light. She held her breath, waited. Then a knock, soft, deliberate, against the metal door. 1 beat, then 2 more. She stayed still, didn't call out. Only when silence returned did she move. At dawn, the back door hung ajar, latch bent like it had been forced. Her heart pounded as she scanned the room. The sketches remained. The notebook, too. But when Eli reached for the Leica from the glove box, he frowned. "This isn't the same one," he said at once. She took it. The leather strap replaced. The lens casing newer. The tiny scratch she used to trace with her thumb gone. Her stomach lurched. Whoever had come hadn't stolen anything obvious. They'd left a message. She grabbed her phone, dialed Simon. 5 rings, voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. The deadline weighed heavier than the knock itself. Turning slowly, she surveyed the car, the bench of the shelves. Her hand tightened around the Chevy's keys in her pocket. Then she slid the bolt on the door. That night, the house settled into uneasy quiet. Marina checked her phone twice before forcing herself to set it face down on the table. The silence stretched through the following days. Simon hadn't returned a call in nearly 2 nights. Not a single message. His porch light stayed dark every time Marina drove past, and the curtains hung so tightly they might as well have been painted shut. She'd left voicemails, texts, even slipped a note under his door. No response. By midweek, a plain white envelope landed in her mailbox, stamped with the county seal. She tore it open on the porch steps, fingers stiff from the chill, though it was barely September. Her eyes skimmed the letter once, then again slower. Temporary seizure of property. Summons to appear. They were coming for the car. They were coming for her. Her chest constricted as she folded the paper with shaking hands. The words blurred, but she didn't need to reread them to feel their weight lodge beneath her ribs. By the time she reached the garage, a black SUV idled at the gate. Catherine stood by the hood, arms crossed, perfectly composed in a navy pantsuit that looked pulled from a courtroom drama. A man in a long coat held a clipboard flanked by a uniformed deputy. Eli peeked out from behind the garage door. Marina stepped in front of him before thinking. "We're here on official notice," Catherine said without preamble. "You've received the paperwork." Marina kept silent, glancing at Eli instead. His mouth hung open, uncertain. "You can't just take it," she whispered. "We're not taking it," the man with the clipboard replied flatly. "We're sealing it, pending investigation," Catherine added, "unless you'd prefer we return with a search warrant and child protective services." At the mention of CPS, she flinched. Eli's hand reached for hers. She stayed rigid. The deputy produced a strip of bright orange tape. Marina watched him loop it over the Chevy like he was cordoning off a crime scene. Eli slipped his hand free and backed away. Later, after the SUV rolled down the road and the tape fluttered weakly in the breeze, she sat by the workbench, staring at the monitor's dim glow. She hadn't touched the camera system in days, but now she opened the folder marked Archives, clicking through subfolders with trembling precision. The newest files were corrupted hours of static, but one mislabeled clip from the month before flickered alive. It showed the garage at night. Shadows crawled across the floor. Then movement. A figure slipped in through the side entrance. Not tall, not hurried, deliberate. He moved with confidence, bypassed the shelves, headed straight for the Chevy. He crouched near the passenger door, metal flashing briefly in his hand. Marina leaned closer. The image was grainy, but the coat, the slicked-back hair, the way he angled his head, unmistakable. Victor. He'd been in her garage. Not once. Not just last night. 4 separate videos, 4 nights, each showing him moving through her space as if it belonged to him. Each time he left with nothing obvious. But in one clip, he paused by the glove box, glanced over his shoulder, and slipped something back inside. Not theft, manipulation. She hit pause. The frame froze. Victor half-turned eyes glinting toward the lens as if he'd known it was there all along. No curse left her lips. She simply reached under the desk for the backup USB drive. The monitor's blue light washed across her face as she copied the folder progress bar ticking down. When it finished, she ejected the drive and tucked it into her pocket. Jaw tight, she scanned the walls until spotting the auxiliary camera above the shelves. It had its own feed, older hardware stored locally. Climbing the stool, she pulled the memory card from the slot and slipped it into the desktop. The folder blinked open. More files, same angles, same man. She pressed play again. This time he looked straight into the lens. Her hand hovered above the keyboard. She didn't blink. Then she yanked the card free, held it tight, plastic edges, biting into her skin. Across the room, the Chevy loomed under the tarp, its shape distorted by orange tape stretched across the frame. Marina kept her eyes on the screen. She queued up the last video clip. The angle was fixed low, slightly tilted, catching just enough of Victor's profile as he crouched by the Chevy. He didn't rummage like a thief. He cataloged. A flashlight in one hand, his other thumbed across his phone. Marina raised the volume. "No, listen." Victor's voice crackled faintly. "The sketches alone could pull 7 figures. But if the music sheets are authentic, Zurich won't blink at 8. Her stomach twisted. He leaned closer to one of the boxes, pried open a flap, and let out a whistle. They thought this junk disappeared after the war. But here it is, sitting in some widow's barn. We move fast, clear customs, and no one's the wiser." The call ended. Victor rose, adjusted his coat, and gave the Chevy a lingering sweep, almost reverent. Then he slipped out the side door as though he'd never been there. Marina froze the frame. Her pulse pounded in her throat. This wasn't theft. It was laundering, international. Cultural property smuggled across decades and borders reduced to dollar signs and offshore accounts. She printed a still from the footage, Victor's face lit by the glow of his phone, the artifact box pried open beside him. Sliding the paper into a folder labeled Evidence, she sealed it and pushed the drawer closed, hand gripping the handle longer than necessary. Outside the monitor's glow, the workshop carried on. Rain streaked the windows. The heater buzzed in the corner. On the floor, Eli sat cross-legged with a sketch pad balanced on his knees. He didn't glance up. "If we give it all away," he murmured, "how will anybody remember the story?" Marina turned. He kept drawing pencil, outlining the dashboard, the curve of the wheel. At the top of the page, in crooked block letters, he had written, "Belongs to the brave woman who kept it safe." Her throat tightened. "We're not giving anything away." Eli nodded, expression solemn, then shaded another line. That night after he was asleep, Marina remained in the garage under a single bulb, sorting papers into piles. Anything valuable went into the fireproof safe. The rest, photos, journals, sheet music, she scanned, labeled "Uploaded" to a hidden drive. Insurance. Her old laptop wheezed, but she pressed on, arms aching, eyes raw. At 1:37 a.m., she attached the archive to an email draft. To Nina, Marcel.presso@protonmail.com. Subject, "In case something happens." Her finger hovered. She didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, she scrolled to Nina's number still saved after all these years and tapped out a message. Need to talk. Quietly. Call me when safe. It's about stolen history. Setting the phone aside, she exhaled, rubbed her face the ache in her chest, no longer panic but a constant pressure. A countdown ticking under every breath. The scanner beeped again. Another document, another fragment of a puzzle that might never fit together. She rose to check the tray. Just as her fingertips brushed the page, the phone lit up with an unknown number. Not Nina, no name, no area code. She hesitated, then pressed answer. The voice that came was low, composed, almost gentle. A man's voice. Unfamiliar. If you know what's good for you, he said evenly, you'll leave everything where you found it. Walk away and no one gets hurt. No threat in his tone, no anger, just certainty as if reciting instructions from a label. She kept silent. A click ended the call. Standing there, phone in one hand and the scan page in the other, her gaze fixed on the workshop door. Her hand hovered over the mouse. On the table lay two things: a manila envelope with a notarized form relinquishing the Chevy to the county and a draft email addressed to journalist Benjamin Rourke. Subject line: evidence of art trafficking and property seizure under false pretense. Sleep hadn't touched her. Eli still curled on the couch, wrapped in the old blanket with stitched bears. His breathing had steadied only an hour ago after a nightmare that tore soundless screams from him. Marina's finger twitched. One click and everything would move forward, or unravel. Her mind circled the worst case: Eli taken by child services. Catherine standing in court with that calm, patronizing smile. The words "unfit mother" buzzing through the air like flies. She heard her own mother's brittle warning echo. You don't poke the hornet's nest unless you're ready to bleed. A knock jolted her. She flinched, cracked the door. Catherine stood there, hair flawless, blazer crisp. No fury in her face, just a composure that felt staged. I came alone, she said. Marina stayed silent. There's a way to settle this, Catherine continued. Privately, quietly. No one has to lose anything. You mean me, Marina said. I'm the one losing. No. I mean, Eli, Catherine corrected, voice dipping lower. You don't want him dragged into this circus, do you? Marina's hold on the doorframe stiffened. You file that story, you'll look reckless. Obsessed. It won't end well for you, Marina. Her voice cracked. And if I don't, then what he grows up thinking his father's legacy was nothing but rust and lawsuits. A pause stretched. Catherine shook her head lightly, lips pressed tight. Think about what matters. Then she walked away. Marina tracked her down the driveway until she vanished. The envelope on the table seemed to grow heavier. She returned, shut the door gently, and sat. The cursor blinked. Eli murmured in his sleep, shifting under the blanket. She reread the draft. Attachments, photographs, video stills, Simon's customs record. Names, numbers, dates, places. Her thumb hovered over the send key. Memory surfaced: Eli at 6, sprinting through the tall grass, asking if ghosts could live in cars. She'd laughed, then said no. But now maybe ghosts didn't cling to metal. Maybe they clung to silence. She hit send, closed the laptop, locked it in the cabinet. That night, shattering glass jolted her awake. She bolted to the garage, barefoot, heart hammering. The side window lay in shards under the moonlight. Shelves overturned, the drawer for backup drives gutted. Eli rushed in, also barefoot, trembling. Mom, what? She pulled him close, pressed his head to her chest. Don't move. Together they turned. The Chevy remained untouched, but the back wall bore a spray-painted warning in red: stop digging. She called the police. They photographed, dusted, made notes. None of it would matter. One deputy, younger with a soft southern drawl, asked gently, ma'am, anything in that car that might give someone reason to escalate? Marina met his eyes. Yes, he nodded. Promised to flag it priority, but his look said, this is bigger than us. After they left, she wrapped Eli in his blanket and tucked him into the cot in her room. He didn't sleep. Neither did she. Before dawn, she pulled up Rourke's number. The call rang 5 times. Rourke, a groggy voice, answered. She steadied her breath, voice raw. I need you to print it before sunrise. Everything. The story, the video, the scans. I don't care if it's risky. A pause. You sure about that? He asked. No, she whispered, but do it anyway. The room reeked of over-polished wood and strategy. Marina stepped in slowly, greeted by the low hum of an old ceiling fan and the sharper murmur of voices waiting. Victor Hale sat with his legs casually crossed fingertips, pressed together. To his left, Catherine wore her usual thin-lipped smile, hands folded neatly on a manila folder. A suited man with a shaved head and government badge adjusted his glasses as she approached the table. We appreciate you coming in voluntarily, the man said. Marina offered no reply, only lowered herself into the chair they indicated. Her hands stayed curled in her lap. Victor gestured, voice smooth. We're here to resolve this quietly. There seems to be a misunderstanding regarding your possession of certain historically sensitive items. From a side table, Catherine pushed forward a document. This is a sworn statement suggesting you fabricated provenance records, misrepresented ownership, and may have engaged in illegal retention of cultural property. The words landed like lead. She didn't touch the paper. The man continued, measured. Depending on what we find in the investigation, these could constitute criminal charges. We're giving you a chance to cooperate now before things escalate. Her mouth went dry. I have proof, she said quietly. Video footage from my security system. I saw Victor breaking into my workshop. Victor's smile didn't falter. That's quite an accusation, Ms. Klein. Her fingers trembled as she drew a USB from her jacket pocket. She handed it over. The officer plugged it into his laptop. Everyone leaned forward. The screen stayed black. A loading bar blinked once, then vanished. Folder empty. No files detected, the officer said after a beat. Did you check this before bringing it? She stared. That's not, her voice cracked. It was there. I watched it. Catherine sighed. Perhaps stress is causing confusion. Or maybe she tampered. Victor folded his arms. People under pressure often invent stories to protect themselves. Their faces remained unmoved, rehearsed. Through the glass partition, Eli sat on a chair, sketchbook on his knees. He wasn't drawing, just watching, small and still. Something in her cracked. Victor leaned in. Truth is a malleable thing, Marina. Doesn't matter what really happened, only what can be proven and what can be controlled. He rose and buttoned his jacket slowly. My advice, sign over the vehicle. Say it was a mistake. You didn't know what you were handling. Let the professionals take over. No one spoke. She stood. Her knees wobbled, but she forced herself upright. I want to leave, she said to the officer. Her voice no longer shook. Am I being detained? He shook his head. No, ma'am, but we'll be following up shortly. Victor opened the door like a gentleman. His cologne smelled expensive and cold. She passed him without a glance, scooped up Eli's hand as they exited. Her hold was too tight. He didn't complain. At the truck, she didn't drive. She sat behind the wheel, staring through the windshield at dust dancing in the late light. Her jaw clenched until it ached. You're bleeding, Eli said softly. She looked down. Her palm had split where her nails dug in. Why didn't you tell them everything he asked? The story. All of it. She couldn't answer. Not when proof protection safety had evaporated in front of her. Not with Victor's voice echoing. Still, truth doesn't matter. Control does. Something ticked beneath her ribs. Slow. Then faster. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was memory. Of late nights at the workbench with Peter building engines and trust. Of Eli sleeping with a grease-stained rag clenched like a teddy bear. Of the day she drove the Bel Air into the yard and something whispered, this means more than you know. She reached into the glove box and pulled out the second USB. The real one. She'd split the footage, left the dummy in her coat. A lesson from Peter, never hand over your only copy, never show your whole hand. Eli watched her. His mouth curved slowly. You knew they'd come. I hoped I was wrong. They sat a moment longer before she turned the key. The truck rumbled to life. I need to speak to someone else, she murmured more to herself than him. Simon, her fingers tightened on the wheel. We'll see. They pulled into the night headlights, carving a narrow path through the gathering dark. By morning, the drive felt like a blur she couldn't quite retrace. The truck sat cooling in the lot, the air heavy with dew. When Marina stepped out to check the mailbox, a cardboard envelope waited with no return address. Just her name, Marina Lorne, typed neatly in the center. She froze for a moment, scanning the street beyond the gate before carrying it back into the workshop. She slit the top carefully with the corner of a wrench. The room, dim from the overcast morning, seemed to hold its breath with her. The package held a small flash drive wrapped in black tape, a folded sheet of matte photographic paper, and a short handwritten note on plain stationery. She unfolded the note first. "Don't let him bury this again. S." She read it twice, then turned to the drive. Then the photo. The image showed Victor Hale, younger but unmistakable, shaking hands with a man she remembered from a news article someone investigated for trafficking stolen cultural artifacts across Europe. They stood beside a black shipping crate numbered in chalk. She froze for several seconds. Her fingertips trembled slightly against the edges of the picture. Then came the rush of clarity. She crossed the room, slid the flash drive into her old laptop. The screen flickered to life. It was all there. The video, unedited Victor, pacing through her garage at night, lifting the lids of boxes, speaking quietly into his phone. "This one's easily worth 8 figures once we route it through Zurich," he'd said, as clear as if he were beside her again. She didn't wait. She zipped the folder, encrypted it, and emailed copies to 3 separate contacts: a former classmate who freelanced for a European investigative site, a retired customs agent who had once spoken at her high school, and a local news editor she barely knew, but whose article on her husband's funeral once made her cry in the car. She hit send. All 3. The files shot out like flares in the dark. No turning back. She stepped away from the computer just as the bell above the garage door jangled. Catherine stood in the doorway, a thin wool coat clutched at the collar. Her eyes were puffy lips pressed into a trembling line. "I didn't know," Catherine said, barely a whisper. "I didn't know what Victor was doing." Marina leaned on the counter, arms crossed. "But you came to every meeting with him. I thought he was helping us." Marina stayed silent, her gaze steady until it wrapped around them both. Catherine blinked rapidly, stepped forward, then stopped. "He lied to all of us." Still, Marina did not flinch. Not cruel, just immovable. "I'm sorry," Catherine finally murmured, voice catching. Marina shifted slightly, resting her hand over the envelope on the counter. She didn't offer it. Didn't shred it either. Catherine backed away and left the same way she had come, her boots scuffing softly on the gravel. The door clicked shut. The wind pressed dry leaves against the siding. Marina exhaled. It was the kind of breath that shook something loose in her chest. Not release, not quite, but motion. She turned the bolt on the garage door, then walked past the workbench toward the back. Eli stood before the Chevy, notebook in hand, his knees slightly bent, tongue tucked out as he concentrated on his sketch. "I drew it," he said without looking up. She crouched beside him, watching as his pencil filled in the knobs on the dashboard. "Every piece," Eli added. "Even the things they didn't let me see. I remembered them." Marina studied the worn page full of rough edges and confident lines. The headlights, the secret compartment, a small figurine he had never touched but somehow recalled in perfect detail. "If they take it," he whispered, "we'll still have the story right." She wrapped one arm gently around his back, pulled him into her side. The warmth of his shoulder steadied her. She didn't answer right away. Instead, her eyes drifted to the window. Clouds parted, and morning light struck the roof of the car, glinting across the cracked chrome like it still had somewhere to go. The headline was everywhere: "Stolen heritage hidden in small-town garage. Alleged money laundering ring." Exposed. Marina stared at the screen in disbelief. The article had gone live at 5:43 a.m., and within minutes it spread across social media, then to national networks. Every photo, every line of the report, every frame of Victor's recorded break-in, it all played on the morning news loop, a slow, deliberate anchor voice threading it like a crime drama. She stood in the kitchen, barefoot, holding her coffee as though it might spill from her grip. Eli rushed in, socks sliding across the floor. "Mom, they said your name. They're showing the car." Marina gave a small nod, then turned toward the muted TV. Her garage, captured from a drone shot, was frozen on the screen, sunlight pooling on the Chevy's dusty roof. Her phone buzzed violently on the counter. "Unknown number." She answered on instinct. A woman's voice, precise, professional, introduced herself as an assistant to the state attorney's office. They wanted to meet. "We'd like you to consider cooperating as a material witness," the woman said. "You've potentially uncovered part of a larger international trafficking operation." Marina glanced toward the living room doorway, where Eli pretended not to listen. Marina agreed to the meeting. After hanging up, she stayed still, the old heater humming behind her, ticking as it cooled. On the wall beside the fridge, a photo of her and Daniel taken in front of the shop 5 years earlier hung slightly askew. Her chest tightened. His voice came back steady from a night long ago when they argued about money, the future of the shop, whether they were clinging to something too broken to mend. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and said, "You don't need to win, Rena. You just have to keep showing up." Only later did she realize how much she would need that voice. A soft rumble passed down the street, another neighbor driving to work, the usual rhythm of the town, returning unaware, or pretending that something monumental had cracked open overnight. She changed out of her pajama pants, tied her hair back, and headed to the garage. The door creaked open slower than usual, not from age, but from what now resided there. At the threshold, she paused, letting her eyes adjust. The smell of motor oil, old paper, and metal grounded her. In the center, the Chevy stood like a monument, no longer suspicious, no longer hidden. Free. The police had come earlier that morning, delivering a copy of the judge's reversal temporary seizure order, lifted pending full investigation. Marina had read it twice. Victor hadn't been arrested yet, but the summons had been issued. His name filled every news segment. Catherine had disappeared from public view. It wasn't justice yet, but it was movement. She crossed to the corner workbench where the old tin box waited. Her hand hovered over the latch. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of what it held. She opened it. The artifacts lay, as she had left them, brittle sketches on yellowing paper, fragments of compositions on curled sheet music, a folded inventory list in looping cursive that now matched confirmed war records. This wasn't just lost history, it was testimony. She lifted a small brass pendant from the box initials, too faded to read, and placed it on a linen cloth. One by one, she arranged the items, aligning them with careful reverence. Behind her, Eli stepped into the room and knelt beside the car. He didn't speak, only traced the door frame as though following the outline of memory. Marina turned slightly. "You think it knows it's free?" Eli shrugged. "I think it's waiting." She smiled faintly, then faced the artifacts again. Light through the side window struck the pendant's edge, making it glow for a moment before fading. She cataloged each piece with her camera, uploading them into a secure folder. Then she printed fresh copies of the files, sealed them in waterproof sleeves, and stored them in a new fireproof box she had picked up from the hardware store that morning. As she worked, the air felt lighter. The stillness didn't weigh, it listened. She wasn't hiding anymore. When she finished, she stepped back and surveyed it all. No fear, no burden, just the knowledge that the names could finally be spoken aloud, and that somewhere someone might listen. 2 weeks later, she carried those names and documents into the courthouse, each page now part of the official record. The courtroom hummed with the weight of attention. Hardwood floors clicked beneath careful shoes, and the air carried that charged hush when something pivotal was about to shift. Rows of benches were packed, town residents, journalists, clerks, and strangers who knew Marina's name from headlines. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flattening even the boldest faces. At the witness table, Marina kept her hands locked together in her lap, jaw set firm. Across from her sat Catherine, smaller than memory, eyes rimmed red, gaze downcast. Beside her, Victor leaned back, mouth curled between smirk and shrug. He hadn't spoken yet. His lawyer had. The judge called for order. On the twin screens, a paused frame waited Victor, mid-motion, reaching into a crate in Marina's garage. She'd seen that image so many times it barely registered. But when it rolled forward clear and slow, the room shifted. Gasps rose, not loud but shared. The prosecutor kept his tone level. This footage, alongside bank records linking wire transfers to a Zurich-based front organization, matches findings from an ongoing investigation into illicit art trafficking across borders. Marina held still. A port official testified via video call, linking a 1946 customs document, once dismissed for a forged signature, to a string of post-war shipments, one matching the VIN now tied to Marina's Chevy. Victor's attorney objected, redirected, minimized. It didn't hold. The judge leaned forward. The court finds substantial cause to proceed with formal charges against Mr. Victor Hale. We authorize an extended investigation and full audit of his business holdings. No applause followed. The quiet that settled pressed heavier. Victor's mask cracked. For the first time, Marina glimpsed what lay beneath. Not anger, not denial. Exposure. Catherine rose slowly. "Your Honor," she said, voice low but steady. "I withdraw from the property dispute filed under my family's name. I no longer believe the claim has merit." Marina turned her head just enough. Their eyes met. Catherine's shoulders sagged before she sat again. The court recessed. Out in the hallway, 100 stares grazed Marina's shoulders. Reporters called her name, thrust out phones, murmured into mics. She kept walking. Eli waited by the door, pale but resolute, sketchbook clutched tight, backpack strap sliding down one arm. She reached for him. He gripped her hand without hesitation. Together they passed the crowds, the parking lot, the marble steps. No one followed. At the edge of town, wrapped in the familiar scent of motor oil and pine dust, they stopped before the Chevy. Dust still clung to the hood, despite everything: rain, cameras, the fingerprints of strangers. Time had scarred at people too, but it remained. Eli touched the handle. "Can we?" Marina didn't reply at once. Her fingers traced the chrome trim, the curve of the door. She pulled it open, letting the creak speak for them both. Sliding into the driver's seat, she set her palms against the wheel. The leather cracked, but warm welcomed her back. Eli climbed into the passenger side. His knees didn't reach the glove box, so he folded them crisscross on the seat. She turned the key. The engine coughed, then caught faint at first, then stronger. Alive. She glanced at her son. Now she whispered, "We can drive it." His smile came without pause. Outside, the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the garage in gold. She released the brake-shifted gears, and for the first time in what felt endless, they moved forward. No fanfare. Only the hum of wheels on gravel, and nothing, absolutely nothing, pulling them back. The workshop stood hushed under the mid-morning sun, its walls holding the pause like a deep breath. Marina stepped in slowly, without the usual weight of fear trailing behind. No reporters, no police cars, no fists pounding for surrender. Just dust light and the soft echo of her own steps. She didn't flip the switch. Instead, natural glow seeped through the windows, streaking across the covered hood of the Bel Air. Its outline looked different now, not just a car, but a witness, a vessel for stories nearly lost to shadow. Passing the shelves, she pulled down a worn tin box from the top drawer of a rusted cabinet. It held her husband's old maintenance log, creased, oil-stained, heavier than memory should allow. She had almost forgotten it existed. Her touch lingered on the cover like skin, familiar yet distant. Page after page bore his neat, slanted handwriting. Notes about carburetors, sketches of bolts. Sometimes a grease-smudged fingerprint in the margin. Near the back, where the ink had blurred from water or time, she found words she had never seen before. "You can fix anything, babe. Even yourself if it comes to it." The line struck, not like a blow, but like a door opening without sound. Her throat tightened. Tears welled, sliding down soft as rain tracing glass. She lowered herself to the cold floor, the book across her lap, and let go. Not with sobs, not with despair, but with a long exhale, as though years of holding everything together could finally be released without breaking. A creak from the back door lifted her head. Eli entered, sneakers tapping across the cement. He said nothing, just sat beside her and opened his sketchbook. Pencil moved without hesitation, shaping the Bel Air. Then the horizon behind it, a winding road, a bright sky, trees flanking the distance. At the top of the page, he added a small figure, 2 dots for eyes, a curve for a smile behind the wheel. Marina leaned closer, resting her palm lightly over his, not stopping him, only anchoring them both. "You're really good at that," she murmured. He kept drawing. "I just remember how it feels. That makes it easier." She nodded, afraid words would undo her again. Yet his presence steadied her, the clarity of a child who knew remembering was its own kind of preservation. The bell above the front door jingled. She stood wiping her cheeks with the sleeve of her flannel shirt. At the entrance, the mail carrier waited, holding a flat envelope and a clipboard. "Delivery for Marina Holt," he said. "Signature required." She scrawled her name, then accepted the package, heart beating faster now. The return address read, State Office of Cultural Affairs. Tearing the seal, she drew out a certificate embossed in official recognition of custodianship for cultural assets. Community Heritage Preservation Program. Attached was a letter designating the Bel Air's contents as a protected cultural collection under her stewardship. She read the words 3 times, convincing herself it was real. After everything broken, sleep, stolen files, courtrooms, and fear, this paper meant no one could take it again. Not legally, not quietly, not ever. Eli stood at her side, peering at the certificate. Does this mean it's ours now? It means, she whispered, we get to tell the story. The whole story. On our terms. His grin widened. Can I paint the trunk next? She laughed, truly laughed. Let's maybe wait on that part. Together they turned toward the car. Sunlight caught the chrome sparking like something waking from long sleep. Marina opened the driver's side door and climbed in. The seat groaned, familiar and welcome. Eli slid beside her, careful not to crease his drawing. She traced the wheel with both hands. No ghosts here anymore. Just legacy. Just memory finding voice. And for the first time, she didn't see a machine. She saw a beginning. Headlines carried the story she had feared and fought for in equal measure. Victor Hale's mugshot appeared on the news, framed between scrolling banners and a statement from Interpol. Charges were filed not just in the U.S., but echoed through Switzerland, France, and Germany. The network of laundering forged documents and art trafficking unraveled quickly once the first thread was pulled. Marina hadn't been the only one watching, but she had been the one to speak. For the first time in weeks, her phone didn't ring with threats or demands. It rang with offers from museums, cultural foundations, historical societies. Some called from Montreal, others from Vienna. They didn't want to take anything. They wanted her to help preserve it, not as a donor, as a guardian. She sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the proposal from the Heritage Preservation Council, a traveling exhibition they suggested featuring parts of the Bel Air's contents each year. New locations, new stories, same heart. No sale, no commodification. Full control remained with her. Eli bent over a sketch, lifted his head. Are we really doing this? She smiled, pressing her thumb against the folder's edge. Only if we both want to. He nodded solemnly, then grinned. Then we'll need a name. For the museum. We've got time, she replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. 2 days later, Catherine arrived at the workshop alone. No lawyers, no pretense. Her frame seemed diminished posture, folding inward like someone stepping into cold water. I owe you an apology, she said, not bothering to sit. I didn't know what Victor was doing, but I should have asked. I wanted so badly to believe I was protecting the family. Marina stayed quiet. The memory of accusations still echoed in her ribs. Yet time, pain, and Eli's quiet way of seeing the world had carved new space inside her. I'm not going to sue, Marina said at last, but I won't forget. I wouldn't expect you to. She walked Catherine to the door. They didn't hug. At the threshold, Catherine paused, glanced once at the car in the center of the room, and whispered, he'd be proud of what you built. After she left, Marina reopened the back of the workshop. Months earlier, she had cleared out old shelves without knowing why. Now it held something new: warm wood panels, display cases of repurposed steel, and a chalkboard sign that read, Open Saturdays. Stories worth keeping. She didn't charge entry. Kids came after school wide-eyed and sugar-stained, peering at letters, faded canvases, and torn journal pages behind glass. Eli always stood beside them with his sketchbook. That one was found under the floorboards, he'd explained, pointing to cracked sheet music. She thinks it might have been written during the war. Nobody knows who the composer is. Yet. He didn't recite facts. He told stories. Some true, some perhaps imagined. Each one drew the children closer, mouths slightly open, caught between history and wonder. One Saturday afternoon, as light poured in like soft applause through the back windows, a small girl wandered in with her backpack slung over both shoulders. She paused at the Bel Air, moving slowly, fingertips hovering near the steering wheel, as if waiting for permission. Marina noticed, walked over gently, and crouched beside her. Did it ever save someone? The girl asked, eyes still on the car. Marina studied the dented frame, the worn leather, the stories that had almost been lost, the ones still waiting. Yes, she answered softly, more than once. The girl finally raised her gaze, eyes wide. Can you tell me? Marina smiled and settled beside her, on the floor back against the cool steel of the car door. Eli joined them, cross-legged, sketchbook already open. Let me tell you about a box hidden under a seat, Marina began, voice low but steady. and the woman who almost gave up until someone whispered that even broken things can carry truth. As the sun dipped lower, spilling gold across the old concrete floor, the workshop filled with the hum of legacy being passed on, not through headlines or plaques, but through words and eyes that listened and hands that remembered how to draw what mattered. Spring arrived in deliberate breaths, the kind that coaxed petals from frostbitten stems and turned gravel roads into threads of warmth and dust. The town hadn't held a spring festival in over a decade, not since the paper mill closed and the funding vanished along with hope. But this year someone decided it mattered again. They called Marina weeks ahead, her name printed on the invitation in block letters, guest of honor. She almost declined. It's not about the car, the mayor told her gently when she called to hesitate. It's about what you reminded us, what deserves to be kept. So she went, not to speak, just to be there. She sat in the back row of folding chairs scattered across the grassy field beside the old courthouse. Parents bustled, straightening collars, brushing crumbs off skirts, coaxing toddlers into stillness. The air smelled of kettle corn and fresh soil. On stage, a small wooden podium leaned under the weight of too many stickers. A teacher stepped forward, then gestured. One by one, students approached, 6 of them each holding a sheet of paper. Their voices were steady, unhurried. "This is Dusk over Lion Oil on Linen," the first read. "This one's a sketch titled Train Window 1942, the next added. Each name matched a piece recovered from the Bel Air. Each title echoed something Eli had once drawn from memory the day Marina thought they might lose everything. At the field's edge, a glass case stood beneath a cloth canopy. The Chevy rested within, cleaned and restored, but not glamorized. It looked like it had simply remembered what it was meant to be. Someone handed Marina a cup of lemonade. She nodded, thanks, watching, as Eli tugged the sleeve of a younger girl and led her through the pop-up museum. He pointed at the case, then at the posters, then back to the car. "My mom doesn't fix cars anymore," he explained matter of fact. "She fixes forgotten memories." The girl asked something Marina couldn't hear. Eli flipped open his sketchbook to a page with a pencil drawing of a music sheet half curled beneath a brake pedal. He had drawn everything, not perfect, but true. After the ceremony, visitors drifted through the exhibits. Marina returned toward the workshop. The sun sank lower, softening the hour into gold. This time the doors stood open, not from carelessness, but because they were meant to be. Children's voices rang through the space, mingling with faint music from an old radio. The workbenches still held tools, but also storybooks, pencils, bits of string, and a stack of clean rags that smelled faintly of oranges and iron. Nothing hurried here anymore. The place had nothing left to prove. She passed the shelf where the tin box once sat. The documents had been moved to archival storage, but the box remained plain, worn, empty, yet somehow proud. Dusk began to bloom. The crowd had mostly dispersed. A few lingered near the case. Someone had placed a flower on the hood. Marina stepped from the porch and approached the Chevy. Light caught its edges like memory, soft, forgiving. She opened the driver's side door, the hinge sighing. Sliding behind the wheel, she exhaled. Not fatigue, not defeat, just release. Her palm traced the steering wheel, steady now. No tremor, no searching. Simply present. The upholstery had been restitched. The dashboard cleaned, but not replaced. It still smelled faintly of oil and lavender the way it had the first time she sat there. The key, now part of the exhibit, had been left in the ignition for the day. She turned it slowly. The engine murmured awake, not loud, not proud, just alive. She closed her eyes. The breeze stirred her hair through the half-open window. Behind her, someone spoke her name. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought in courtrooms or workshops, but within ourselves. Marina's journey had never been only about saving a car or exposing a crime. It was about finding the courage to rewrite the story she once thought was finished. And maybe that is what healing means, not fixing what's broken, but remembering what deserves to be kept.